You figured I'd remain clueless forever, but fate has a way of catching up. It happened on a Tuesday evening. My instincts should have kicked in right then. Tuesdays rarely bring anything worthwhile. I was stretched out on our king-sized bed when the sound of the shower kicked on once more. This marked Marissa's second rinse of the day, which struck me as odd because she wasn't the overly hygienic type. She typically showered every couple of days, or only when we had something planned. 2 showers in a single day definitely raised a flag. The water continued running as I noticed her purse sitting on the chair by our dresser, appearing as though it had exploded. The zipper was wide open, and contents had scattered across the hardwood. Lip balm, old receipts, scrunchies, and what seemed like a mini drugstore's worth of travel-sized items lay strewn about. I'm not the kind of husband who rifles through his wife's bag. That's a major relationship no-no, right alongside forgetting birthdays or leaving dishes in the sink. But the clutter irritated me, so I decided to play the thoughtful spouse and tidy it up before she emerged and launched into one of her late-night stress-cleaning sessions, like she did when her job overwhelmed her. There I was, being the considerate partner, gathering up feminine products and breath mints, puzzling over why women own dozens of lipsticks that all appear identical. That's when my fingers touched something that felt completely out of place among the everyday items. It was compact, cold, and sleek metal, high-end with crisp edges. I drew it out and held it under the bedside lamp. A polished silver cylinder, roughly 4 inches in length, minimalist in style, like something a luxury tech brand might design if they branched into personal care. The surface featured Japanese characters in black against the metallic shine. It screamed expensive, the sort you wouldn't pick up impulsively at a convenience store. My initial guess was medical. Perhaps she was dealing with some private health concern she hadn't shared. Marissa always avoided discussing anything that made her uncomfortable. But if it was medical, why the Japanese branding? And why keep it secret from me? Curiosity overpowered caution. I pulled out my phone, activated the camera, and scanned the lettering. Google Translate worked its magic while I sat there past 11:30 at night, suddenly doubting everything about my marriage. The result flashed on screen and a chill ran through me. High-end male intimate lubricant, extended duration formula, specifically for men. Not for women, not for couples, explicitly men's and clearly not brand new. The container was roughly halfway used, showing signs of frequent handling. I rotated it in my palm, my mind racing to process while my stomach twisted with the truth I didn't want to accept. Marissa had never purchased anything like this for our bedroom. We hardly ever needed lubricant, and when we did, it was the basic drugstore variety in a generic squeeze bottle. This one looked like it cost more than our weekly food budget, and it obviously wasn't intended for me. I kept staring at the cylinder, then my gaze drifted to her tablet resting on the desk. The display was still active, softly glowing. She'd left it unlocked after finishing some presentation slides earlier. The home screen displayed her organized folders with whimsical labels like Playtime, Office Essentials, and shopping lists. Hold on, shopping lists. I'd never once seen Marissa use any digital grocery app. This was the same woman who would send me to multiple supermarkets for one specific jar of marinara, yet now she had a dedicated shopping folder. It was as suspicious as discovering your health nut spouse hiding fast food wrappers. My fingers trembled as I tapped the folder. Inside sat just one unfamiliar application, a messaging platform with a dull, unremarkable icon. My thumb lingered over it for what felt like ages, probably only 30 seconds. This was the crossroads. Either I was paranoid or my world was about to shatter. I launched it. The conversation loaded, and pinned at the top was a chat with someone called Leo. The avatar was merely a silhouette, but the messages. Dear God, the messages, can't wait for Thursday. Booked our regular suite at the Marriott. Pack that item I love, the silver tube. It always elevates everything. Planning to show you pleasures your husband could never dream of. I scrolled upward. Tears blurred my vision as months of exchanges appeared. Detailed descriptions of hotel rendezvous. Images I regretted viewing. Repeated references to that exact silver cylinder now clutched in my clammy hand. The timestamps crushed me. Every claimed overtime shift. Every supposed evening with girlfriends. Every not tonight sweetheart, I'm exhausted. All fabrications, the shower was still running. I could hear Marissa singing along to some upbeat track, utterly unburdened, as if she hadn't just torched our union with a partially depleted tube of imported lube and a concealed messaging service disguised in a phony shopping folder. I glanced at the cylinder, Then the screen. Then the cylinder again. My trembling stopped. My movements became deliberate, almost serene. I headed to the kitchen, opened the odds and ends drawer, and retrieved the industrial-strength superglue I'd purchased recently for a home fix. If Marissa wanted to indulge in premium imported products, very well. I'd ensure she had a memorable encounter. The shower shut off at last. I'd just completed my small DIY project in the kitchen when the bathroom door creaked open. The pad of barefoot steps on our floors sent my pulse racing, though not with affection anymore. More like anticipation of total chaos. Marissa emerged looking like a commercial model, enveloped in the plush white towel I'd gifted her 2 Christmases ago. "Hey, sweetie," she cooed, her tone laced with that artificial sweetness people use when concealing guilt. "You seem worn out." She went to the kitchen, returned with a large glass of milk and offered it like an olive branch. "Drink this," she urged, perching on the bed's edge. "It'll help you relax. Remember that early meeting tomorrow." Ah, yes, the early meeting I'd casually mentioned over dinner. The one she'd filed away as the ideal window for another clandestine escape. Because nothing screams devoted spouse like drugging your partner to slip away for excitement elsewhere. I accepted the glass, studying her expression in the dim glow. She appeared so attentive, so genuinely concerned about my rest. "Thank you, love," I replied, taking a tiny sip. I feigned swallowing half, then placed it on the nightstand with a warm grin. "You're amazing. I love you." The phrase tasted bitter, but her smile bloomed as if it were sincere. That hurt most, not merely the betrayal, but her ability to meet my eyes with such tenderness while scheming to dash off to a hotel with some guy named Leo. The following hour dragged like eternity. I lay awake, monitoring her breaths until they deepened into the steady pattern signaling she believed I was unconscious. Occasionally, I'd emit a soft snore or adjust position, fully committing to the act of a drugged husband. She was skilled, I have to admit. She waited a complete hour before stirring, likely confirming whatever she'd dosed me with had taken effect. I sensed the bed shift as she eased out cautiously, movements practiced from repetition. At precisely 12:45 a.m., the front door clicked softly open, followed by muffled voices in the corridor. My heart thundered so fiercely I worried it echoed through the building. I allowed exactly 20 seconds, enough for her to feel safe, not enough for them to vanish. Then I slid from bed, donned my robe, and tiptoed to the door like a stealthy suburban operative. The hallway lighting was faint, but I spotted them at the elevator end. Marissa pinned to the wall, a tall man caging her face with his hands, kissing her passionately. Even from afar, he embodied everything I lacked, taller, fitter, easily a decade younger. So this was Leo. The man my wife deemed worth discarding 15 years of marriage for. They ascended to the 4th floor. I trailed them and positioned myself outside apartment 4C, directly above our guest room. Talk about ironic fate. The lover lived right overhead. Muffled voices carried through the thin door. "I still can't believe you live directly above him," Marissa murmured, thrill evident. "Adds to the excitement, doesn't it?" "Absolutely," Leo answered. "Did you pack what I requested?" "Naturally. I brought your favorite, the premium stuff. My specially altered tube of Japanese lubricant, now enhanced with adhesive strong enough to bond aircraft parts." I suppressed laughter by biting my lip. For roughly half a minute, only passionate noises filled the air, the kind expected from 2 people anticipating ecstasy. Then the tone shifted dramatically. "What the?" Leo's voice, startled and alarmed. "Hold on, this isn't right," Marissa said, panic rising. "What did you do? What on earth is this? I don't get it, it's the usual brand. The silver one, the Japanese import. Something's off. We can't separate. Oh no, we're glued together." There it was, the payoff I'd awaited. The delicious panic of 2 adulterers realizing their tryst had become a crisis. They attempted everything. Tap water, dish soap, even olive oil from the pantry. Nothing budged them. "We have to get help," Leo declared, voice strained with agony and humiliation. After about 40 minutes of frantic efforts, they surrendered. I overheard Leo dialing emergency services. "Yes, ambulance required. It's difficult to describe. We're physically joined." That signaled my exit. Mission phase 1 accomplished. The following morning, Marissa dragged herself through our door around 10:30, appearing utterly wrecked. Her hair was a tangled mess, makeup erased, gait suggesting every movement hurt. "Good morning, darling," I greeted without glancing up from my tablet. "How was your evening? You returned quite late." She halted in the entryway, stunned. "A work crisis arose, a major client issue. I had to stay overnight to resolve it." "Rough," I replied, finally meeting her eyes with feigned sympathy. "You look drained." And are you limping? Injured somehow? I tripped at the office. Fell downstairs, strained my lower back. Visited urgent care. They said minor sprain, prescribed pain relief. She shuffled toward the bedroom when a knock sounded. Predictably, Leo stood there, looking as if he'd survived a brutal beating focused below the belt. His pants were loosely fastened, sagging as though contact with skin was unbearable. Hello, he rasped. Is Marissa home? We need to discuss last night's events. Of course, come inside, I invited, stepping back with a welcoming gesture. She just arrived from work, handled some overnight emergency. They attempted coded conversation about their predicament without alerting me. I proposed they take seats since both seemed uncomfortable. The terrified glance they shared was priceless. Sitting was clearly impossible. That afternoon, I shifted to phase 2. I continued the doting husband routine while Marissa exploited her injury excuse. By 4 p.m., she mentioned stomach sensitivity and requested bland food. Ideal timing. I crafted what I dubbed a fiery feast. Lamb kebabs soaked in a marinade fierce enough to intimidate chili peppers, ghost pepper dust, Carolina Reaper bits, habanero puree, and cayenne sufficient to etch metal. Next, garlic shrimp drenched in enough cloves to repel an undead army. The highlight, ultra-spicy chili crab from that downtown Singapore spot, requiring a liability waiver for their hottest version. This wasn't dinner. It was targeted torment for someone with vulnerable anatomy. Her first taste of lamb brought brief delight. Then the burn arrived, but the crab delivered the knockout. One mouthful and her body rigidified as if electrocuted. Her complexion cycled red, pale, then an unnatural green. I think I need to rest, she whispered faintly. Maybe the meds are reacting badly, yet I had more in store. Tucked in our bathroom cabinet was soothing cream she'd likely require soon. I'd emptied it and refilled with pure capsaicin gel, the compound in pepper spray, marketed for joint pain. Visually identical, but on raw skin it would ignite fresh torment. Next dawn at 6 a.m., a blood-curdling scream erupted. Not ordinary, this was raw, soul-deep agony from realizing her soothing cream was now infernal heat. The ointment's defective, she wheezed between gasps. It's on fire, everything's burning. We raced back to the same hospital, Dr. Martinez, who'd managed yesterday's extraction, appeared to be enduring his oddest professional stretch. This inflammation is extreme, he noted post-exam. Yesterday's trauma plus apparent chemical irritation risks severe complications. To prevent tissue death, surgery is advised. We must excise the necrotic areas. Necrosis, dead tissue, irreversible loss, consequences beyond simple healing. The procedure lasted 3 hours. When Dr. Martinez emerged, his face was somber. We removed all compromised tissue, but the resection was extensive. Permanent alterations to function are inevitable. While she recovered, I'd visited my attorney to finalize paperwork, meticulously drafted. Every provision ensured Marissa left our marriage with precisely her due, nothing, except the medical expenses. I entered her room carrying the envelope. Divorce agreement, I announced, setting it on the tray table. Simple terms, you retain nothing. I keep the home, vehicles, accounts, investments. Full custody of our son to me. Why? She pleaded. Why now? I'm recovering from surgery, because I know about Leo. The affair. The hotel's texts, silver lubricant for your side activities. The sedatives to knock me out. The hidden chat app in your fake shopping folder, each fact struck like a slap. She visibly crumpled. She attempted defiance, ripping the papers. I won't sign. I produced duplicates with a calm smile. Refuse this fair offer and we litigate, making everything public. Infidelity, emergency details, drugging, all of it. Instead of yielding, she surprised me. She began laughing, hysterical, unhinged cackling of someone breaking. You believe you've triumphed, she choked out. So clever, but you haven't a clue. Leo won't vanish, and he's hardly the only one. Think this began recently. That's when the full scope emerged. Digging through her tablet history revealed something dwarfing Leo's role. A sophisticated network, private forums via secure apps, and invitation-only sites for married individuals seeking discreet affairs. Marissa had held premium status for over 3 years. I compiled every shred of proof and headed to authorities. The group involved illegalities, tax fraud, paid encounters, corporate embezzlement via expense accounts. Within days, FBI involvement escalated. Accounts frozen. Raids and arrests followed. Meanwhile, a neighbor's footage of the ambulance arrival exploded online. When infidelity backfires spectacularly, racked up 500,000 views rapidly. Leo was identified as a self-proclaimed relationship guru and fitness personality. His employer terminated him swiftly. Marissa's name circulated through our community. Acquaintances ghosted her, book club, conflicts, awkward stares from store clerks. 3 weeks on, Leo returned demanding 20 grand for bills and lost wages. Their disputes spilled from the yard indoors, voices rising, items crashing. When he pushed her down our outdoor stairs, responding officers, summoned by my call, had sufficient cause. Both arrested, new charges layered onto the fraud case. Custody proceedings were straightforward, one parent incarcerated, the other armed with irrefutable evidence of deceit and crime. Detective Morrison messaged, case resolved. Guilty pleas entered. Marissa sentenced to 18 months, Leo to 2 years. I erased the text and refilled my glass. Sometimes justice isn't impartial. Sometimes it simply needs a nudge to focus properly.